Most people eating a sandwich every morning have no idea what is actually baked into the loaf. It looks wholesome. It smells fresh. It sits on the kitchen counter of millions of homes as a staple of daily life. But behind the glossy marketing and the cozy family branding, a quiet controversy has exploded across supermarket shelves. In early 2026, state health officials in Florida pulled major commercial bread brands straight from grocery store shelves and sent them to independent certified labs for testing. The results made national news. Several household name brands came back with detectable levels of glyphosate, the active chemical in the world's most widely used weed killer. How did an industrial herbicide end up in breakfast bread? Which brands tested high, which came back clean, and what does the science actually say about the risk? Today we're breaking down the full investigations of the supply chain, the lab results, the science on both sides, and exactly what to look for next time you're standing in the bread aisle. Let's get into it. To understand how glyphosate gets into your bread, you have to look at how modern wheat is actually grown, harvested, and processed at industrial scale. For most of agricultural history, farming followed the seasons. Farmers planted, waited for the crop to mature and dry naturally, then harvested. But large-scale commercial agriculture changed that equation in the name of speed, predictability, and margin. In much of North America, a practice called pre-harvest desiccation has become common in conventional wheat farming. Instead of waiting for a field to dry out on its own, which depends heavily on unpredictable weather, some conventional farmers spray glyphosate directly onto standing, still green wheat shortly before harvest. This forces the plant to dry out uniformly, which allows for an earlier, faster, more predictable harvest window. It's a real documented agricultural practice, not a fringe theory. The issue is that a maturing grain plant will absorb some of what's sprayed on it. When those kernels are harvested, milled into flour, and shipped to commercial bakeries, trace chemical residues travel with them. They survive milling. They survive baking. And in small amounts, they can end up in the finished loaf. It's worth being precise here. Not all wheat is desiccated this way, and organic wheat is grown without synthetic herbicides at all. But conventional wheat, the kind used in the vast majority of mass-market sandwich bread, passes through a supply chain where glyphosate exposure is a normal, expected part of the process, not an accident or a scandal in itself. The real question the testing raised is how much residue survives and whether that amount matters for human health. This debate moved from academic journals into the mainstream in February 2026, when Florida's Department of Health, under its Healthy Florida First initiative, released independent lab results on 8 bread products spanning 5 national brands. Here's what the testing actually found. Glyphosate was detected in 6 of the 8 products tested, with residue levels ranging from roughly 10 parts per billion up to about 191 parts per billion. State officials, including Florida's Surgeon General, described some of these as triple-digit levels compared to the others tested. The brands flagged with the highest detectable residues included Nature's Own Butter Bread and Nature's Own Perfectly Crafted White, Wonder Bread Classic White, and Sara Lee Honey Wheat. Dave's Killer Bread products tested comparatively low. 2 products in the sample, Sara Lee Artisanal White and Pepperidge Farm Farmhouse White, came back with no detectable glyphosate at all. That last point matters because it tells us this isn't necessarily about a brand's whole identity. It can vary product by product, even within the same company's lineup. Once the results went public, the reaction split along predictable lines. State health officials and consumer advocates argued this data gives families information federal regulators haven't provided, and that chronic low-dose exposure over decades deserves scrutiny, not just a one-time safety threshold. They pointed to research suggesting glyphosate exposure may be associated with gut microbiome disruption and other biological effects, and noted that the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer has classified glyphosate as probably carcinogenic to humans. On the other side, food industry groups, including the American Bakers Association, maintained that bread products remain safe and pointed out that the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has reached a different conclusion, classifying glyphosate as not likely to cause cancer in humans at expected exposure levels. Industry toxicologists emphasize that the amounts detected, parts per billion, sit well below the EPA's legal tolerance thresholds, and that a person would need to eat an unrealistic quantity of bread daily to approach a regulatory safety limit. So who's right? Honestly, this is a genuine, ongoing scientific and regulatory disagreement, not a settled question with an obvious villain. The IARC and the EPA use different methodologies and reach different conclusions on the same chemical. And that disagreement predates this bread testing by over a decade. What the Florida data adds isn't a verdict on safety. It's a concrete brand-by-brand transparency snapshot that didn't widely exist before. For a lot of viewers, the real question isn't, will one slice hurt me tomorrow? Nobody serious is claiming that. It's, if you're eating this bread daily for decades, do you want to know what's measurably in it? And do you have a way to choose lower residue options if you'd rather avoid it? That's a reasonable personal risk tolerance decision, not a panic button. Glyphosate residue is only part of the story here. If you want to understand why a lot of commercial bread behaves more like an engineered cushion than traditional food, look at the rest of the ingredient label. Pick up a standard loaf of mass-market white or wheat bread and read the back. Ingredients like calcium propionate, a mold inhibitor, datum or sodium stearoyl lactylate, dough conditioners that keep texture soft and uniform, and bleached enriched flour that's had its natural bran and germs stripped out and select nutrients added back synthetically. These are hallmarks of industrial-scale baking chemistry, not traditional bread making. Bread made with just flour, water, salt, and yeast. The traditional 4 ingredients humans have used for thousands of years. Goes stale within a few days and molds if left out. Industrial sandwich bread can sit on a shelf for weeks specifically because it's formulated to survive a long, multi-step commercial supply chain. Mixing, proofing, baking, slicing, packaging, warehousing, and distribution across a country or continent. None of this is inherently sinister. Preservatives and conditioners exist because centralized, large-scale baking has real logistical constraints traditional village bakeries never had. But it does mean that when a company optimizes for shelf life, uniform texture, and cost, the resulting product is a different thing than what bread meant for most of human history. Even when the branding on the bag looks warm and homemade. It's worth stepping back for a moment because bread hasn't always meant the same thing. For most of the last several thousand years, bread was a slow fermented product. Wild yeast and naturally occurring bacteria in a starter culture would break down the wheat over many hours, sometimes days. That fermentation process didn't just add flavor. It partially broke down gluten and phytic acid, which many nutrition researchers believe made traditional sourdough easier for a lot of people to digest compared to the fast, chemically leavened bread most of us eat today. The industrialization of bread in the 20th century solved real problems: famine, cost, consistency, and the ability to feed huge urban populations reliably. That's a genuine achievement, but the trade-off was a shift away from slow fermentation and simple ingredients toward speed, shelf stability, and mass uniformity. This matters for our topic because the two issues are connected. Fast industrial production is exactly the kind of supply chain where pre-harvest desiccation, dough conditioners, and long shelf life preservatives all make economic sense. Slower, smaller batch bread production, whether from an artisan bakery or your own kitchen, tends to sidestep most of these pressures entirely, simply because it isn't optimized for the same logistics. One more piece of context that's useful here. This isn't only a US story. The European Union has restricted pre-harvest glyphosate desiccation more heavily than the United States, and several EU countries have pushed for tighter glyphosate limits or outright bans over the past decade, citing the IARC's cancer classification. The EU's glyphosate license itself has been a recurring political battleground, renewed only after contentious debate among member states. That doesn't settle the underlying science. Regulators in Europe and the US are looking at similar data and landing in different places, partly because of different regulatory philosophies about precaution versus proof. But it does show that reasonable governments genuinely disagree on how cautious to be, which is a good reminder that this is a live policy debate, not a fringe conspiracy theory on one side or corporate cover-up on the other. So does this mean giving up bread entirely? No. It means shopping a little more deliberately if reducing your exposure matters to you. Here's a practical framework. First, check for a real third-party certification. Look for the glyphosate residue-free seal from the Detox Project, a real independent certification program that tests finished products down to their lowest detectable limits, rather than relying on farm-level claims alone. It's a genuinely useful shortcut if you want lab-verified assurance rather than just a marketing claim. Second, understand what organic does and doesn't guarantee. A USDA organic seal means synthetic herbicides weren't intentionally used by that specific farm. It does not fully protect against spray drift from neighboring conventional fields, which is one reason some organic products still show trace residues in independent testing. Organic lowers your odds significantly. It doesn't guarantee zero. Third, read the ingredient list, not just the front of the bag. Shorter is generally simpler: flour, water, yeast, salt, and maybe a natural oil. A long list of conditioners and preservatives is a signal of industrial-scale processing, which correlates with, though doesn't guarantee, a supply chain more likely to include conventionally desiccated wheat. Fourth, consider the freezer aisle. Bakeries that skip chemical preservatives generally can't sit at room temperature for weeks, so many naturally made options. Sprouted grain breads like Ezekiel 4:9 from Food for Life or Silver Hills Sprouted Bakery are sold frozen. That's not a marketing quirk. It's a direct consequence of not using shelf-stabilizing chemistry. Fifth, if specific brands matter to you, check the actual test data. The full Florida DOH results, including which exact products and lots were tested, are public. If a brand you buy regularly wasn't in this particular 8-product sample, that silence isn't a clean bill of health. It just means it wasn't tested yet. Don't assume. Look it up. Here's the honest summary. Independent Florida testing found detectable glyphosate residue in 6 out of 8 popular bread products, at trace levels well below the EPA's legal thresholds. But there's genuine, unresolved scientific disagreement about whether below threshold means no reason for concern, especially with decades of daily cumulative exposure. Some products and some brands tested clean. Reasonable people can look at the same data and land in different places on how much it should change their shopping habits. You don't need to panic, and you don't need to ignore it either. Now you know what was actually tested, what the results actually said, and what a genuine third-party certification looks like if you want to shop around this issue with real information instead of a marketing claim. If this helped you make sense of the headlines, share it with someone who eats this stuff every week. Thanks for watching. Stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one.